was Stormbreaker initially meant as a contingency plan to kill Thor rather than aid him in his ascension to the throne as King of Asgard. Of all the characters in the MCU, very few have as much longevity as that of Thor, who is the first hero in the Marvel Universe to be granted a total of 4 solo films. He has appeared in a total of 8 movies together and has been through a long and arduous evolution. One of his most dramatic growths in power was when he acquired the fabled, god-killing weapon known as Stormbreaker, which was first introduced in Avengers Infinity War in 2018. This weapon was one of legend, fit for a king as Eitri would put it, with Thor saying it's one of the only weapons in the 9 realms capable of killing Thanos, but we believe it was actually designed with a much more sinister purpose. So is it possible that this weapon was not in fact designed to kill Thanos, but was instead a contingency plan set in place to kill none other than Thor himself? Well, come along with us today and let's talk about that Marvel theory. Was Stormbreaker intended to kill Thor? What's more important to note about Stormbreaker is that when Thor arrives at Nidavellir to retrieve a weapon, one capable of killing Thanos, he finds that Eitri already has a mold in place, one to craft such an incredibly dangerous and a powerful weapon. Because of this, we know that plans for the weapon were already set in place by someone beforehand, even though at this point the weapon was still entirely theoretical, and hopefully it would never have to be crafted at all. What's not confirmed, however, is who commissioned the mold for the weapon, or why such a powerful blueprint was made in the first place. If a previous king of Asgard wished to wield the power of Stormbreaker, then why build the mold and not go through with actually crafting the weapon, unless it was meant to be used only as a last resort? Given all of this, we propose that it was actually Allfather Odin who designed this weapon and sent the directive to Eitri in case he ever needed something this powerful, in case he ever needed a weapon that could break a storm. So what could have made Thor such a threat that this plan was ever put in place, and who put the plan in place to begin with? In order to understand, it's important that we look back at Odin's past, and more importantly, the mistakes that he has made on his way to becoming the Allfather. Odin has an illustrious career as an intergalactic warlord, conquering the galaxy world by world with his eldest daughter by his side, and serving as a fearsome ruler before abandoning this path of conquest and fear-mongering to instead become a benevolent protector of the 9 realms. When we first met Odin, he is a peaceful and a well-contended ruler, but Odin has not always been this way. Abandoning his path of conquest famously enraged Hela, who saw it as her right to dominate and rule whatever realm that she conquered, ultimately leading to her forceful imprisonment. If she was capable of taking it, then she believed that it was her right to have it, whatever the it in question was, even if it meant entire worlds. Her history was then covered up, with her name and story buried deep in Asgard's history, and left untaught by the Allfather and the people of Asgard in hopes that the civilian population may eventually forget that Hela ever existed. For generations this would work. Hela's name was forgotten, and the true history of Asgard and how the Empire was built was covered up along with her. But one individual never forgot. Odin rebuilt the Asgardian image as one of benevolence and peace, teaching prosperity, preaching peace, and seeking an existence where he would never seek out war, but must always be ready for one. But Odin knew the truth. He knew the bones and the soot on which his kingdom of Asgard was built. Hela even pointed out that the gold within the palaces and the streets of Asgard was all pillaged from elsewhere. Years later, after Hela was imprisoned and long forgotten, he would later father a son, one who would grow into a powerful warrior and a gifted fighter, being groomed to inherit the throne of Asgard and the responsibilities of being a king. As he fought, Thor grew into an incredibly arrogant, brash warrior who would seek conflict and glory in order to bask in the glow of his victories. In Thor's first movie, he was an incredibly self-centric warrior who wanted nothing more than to fuel his own ego, showing his prowess in combat and his skill. He picked fights because he knew he was superior, and was quickly growing into someone who could very well fall into the exact same trap that Odin had seen before, one that Odin himself had fallen into. Thor felt no threat could match him, that no battle was too great, and that he would grow to become the most powerful warrior in the history of the 9 realms. Though the people of Asgard did not know of their true history, the Allfather certainly did, and according to this theory, Odin was not about to let history repeat itself. By the first Thor film, Thor was a warrior with centuries of experience on the battlefield and across all the 9 realms, but his character was one of brash recklessness. of hot-headed arrogance, and Odin saw this pattern forming yet again. He saw the similarities that he had passed down to his son, and feared the idea that he too would become a warmongering tyrant, one bent on conquest, much the same as his daughter so many years before. His thirst for battle threatened to become unquenchable, and it was only a matter of time before he would inherit the throne of Asgard in Odin's place. And he had to make sure that the seat and the throne was in good hands. If the rule of Asgard fell into the hands of another conqueror, then there would be no one who could stand in the way of a ruthless King Thor. And because of all of this, as a contingency plan to combat Thor's recklessness, he would have gone to Eitri the dwarf and blacksmiths of Nidavellir in order to commission a mold for a weapon capable of killing an extremely powerful Asgardian god and king should the need ever arise. Eitri states that the weapon is fit for a king, but what if the king in question was not meant to be Thor, or that being fit for a king meant that it could kill one? What if the king that Eitri was referring to was the one that would wield the weapon, whether that king be Odin or the king that would overthrow Thor? If Odin feared the idea that Thor would take after his sister and be bent on conquest, it makes sense that he would set a contingency plan in place to eliminate his son if he ever threatened the safety and security of the 9 realms, especially after learning from his mistakes. After all, Thor's trajectory seemed to be heading in that very direction, seeing as just before his inheritance of the throne of Asgard, he sought out war with the Frost Giants. He spoke brashly and boldly of conquering them and slaying them all. And if he had inherited the throne of Asgard, he would have the entirety of the Asgardian forces at his back. He would assume complete control of the Asgardian military. The soldiers would have been compelled to follow him into battle, and if Odin and Hela were able to begin their conquest from scratch and achieve such greatness as before, then what might Thor be capable of with such a head start? Odin and Hela had nothing to work with. They collected the forces of Asgard and amassed an army through blood, sweat, and tears. So for Thor, another child of Odin, to take this army and run mad, who is to say what he could have done, what he could have accomplished, what his kingdom might look like? Even Odin shuddered in fear at the thought of what someone like Hela could have done and what she could have taken with access to all of Asgard's resources. We know that the power that Thor wields does not come from Mjolnir or Stormbreaker, but is latent within him and can be channeled through various artifacts and weapons. But most notably, Mjolnir. Stormbreaker, on the other hand, does not channel the power of Thor, but enhances it. If Stormbreaker amplifies the power of its user, then the lightning capabilities that we see are not in fact elements of the weapon, but are instead Thor's own powers being channeled through the axe and magnified tenfold. This could very well have channeled and amplified the powers of whatever Asgardian king would have had to wield it, be it Thor, Odin, or someone else down the line of Asgardian rulers. And of course, could have potentially given someone the power to overthrow the tyrannical king of Asgard, should that ever come to pass. If Stormbreaker could have done the same thing, then Odin could have easily been able to conquer Thor had Eitri pulled the trigger and forged Stormbreaker. Odin knew very well of Thor's capabilities and abilities to channel lightning. This may have been why he led Thor to believe that Mjolnir was the source of his power, not telling him the truth of the power within himself, not until he was 100% certain that Thor was worthy of the power that he possessed. If Thor discovered the true potential of the power held at his fingertips while he was still an arrogant warrior, he could have been corrupted by that power, broken free of anyone's control, and become the most fearsome ruler the universe had known. Therefore, we believe that Odin put a backup plan in place, constructing one final trump card that would break the storm, a storm that was the god of thunder himself, in the case that he followed in the steps of his kin. But anyway, friends, what are your thoughts on this theory? Do you think that Stormbreaker could have been a backup plan to kill Thor? And who do you think was the original individual who commissioned Stormbreaker? Thank you so much for watching. Hulk smash that subscribe button for more Marvel lore, and have a phenomenal day.